Welcome to Steel City Soliloquies, where we explore the past, present, and ongoing path of Pittsburgh through its 90 neighborhoods. I'm Ken, your host and prodigal Pittsburgher, who returned after 25 years to find a place that felt both eerily familiar and utterly unrecognizable. I've spent the last 5 years getting reoriented and reacquainted, and I use this podcast to help everyone keep up with and share the stories the city is spinning right now.
Hi, everyone. Thanks for tuning in. Today, we're on the South Side. And of course, when you think of the South Side, the first thing you think of is nightlife.
Hotspots like Mario's, Avalon, Enclave, Pitch, Jimmy D's Cafe, and Club Cafe.
But the South Side offers a variety of other options.
Need a quiet place to enjoy a cup of coffee? Encanto's or Delaney's is just the place. You can get your Zen on at Yoga Hive. Pick up a custom crafted candle at M-Tree. Need a trim or a new look? Philip Pelusi or any of Southside's several barber shops can help. Southside also has a full-service florist, Esser's. Vote Hardware is there for anyone tackling home projects. And Thick Bikes can outfit you for a trip on the Riverfront Trail. Dining options are improving also with new arrivals like La Dolce Vita, Teocale, Bedford House, and Sushi Tomo. And they're taking their places alongside established favorites.
And the South Side is more than just Carson Street. Want to spend some time on the water? It boasts a boat launch conveniently located to Point Park, downtown, and the North Shore. If you feel like fishing, there's a prime fishing spot just upriver. In the mood for a bike ride? The Great Allegheny Passage goes right through the South Side. And if you want, you can go all the way to Georgetown in Washington, D.C. The South Side has a lot to offer, and it has a long history, too. It started with a land grant to George Ormsby from King George III in 1763. By 1811, it had grown into the borough of Birmingham and had become a glass manufacturing center, at one time producing almost half the glass used in the U.S. In 1854, the steel industry arrived with the establishment of the American Iron Works, which later became J&L Steel. By 1872, more steel plants arrived in Birmingham, and the area grew into a major center for heavy industry. That growth did not go unnoticed by its neighbor, the city of Pittsburgh, and in 1872, Pittsburgh annexed Birmingham, and the area became known as the South Side. The South Side flourished well into the 20th century, becoming a magnet for Eastern European immigration, as well as attracting significant numbers of African Americans migrating out of the South after the Civil War. But in the 1980s, with the collapse of heavy industry, the South Side suffered severe economic decline and population loss. But even as the factories were closing, public-private partnerships were planning the next phase for the neighborhood as a shopping and entertainment destination. For the next 40 years, community groups like the Southside Local Development Company partnered with public entities like the URA to revitalize East Carson Street.
That partnership also led to revitalization in the larger neighborhood, as an influx of new residents built new houses and breathed life into older ones too.
We've seen how the South Side has adapted since the end of the industrial era. We've witnessed the resiliency and the creativity of its residents and backers. So let's find out where the South Side goes from here. To help us map that course, we have Susan Anderson, Business District Manager for the Carson Street Corridor, City Councilperson Bob Charland, whose district includes the South Side, and John DeMauro, who has been a longtime resident and who also owns several businesses, including the Urban Tap, which has been a Carson Street institution since it opened in 2014. And I want to give a special special thanks to John for hosting us here at the Urban Tap this morning. What better place to talk about the future of the South Side? So let's get started. Since the early 90s, the South Side has been known for its nightlife. In fact, most people who don't live here, it's what they think of first. Each of you either works or lives in the South Side, so you have an insider's perspective, a bit of a different take. So what comes to mind when you think of the South Side?
Well, I think the first thing that comes to mind for me is that this is a highly social neighborhood. One of the realities of the South Side is that a lot of folks live in the South Side, could live somewhere else if they wanted to. They choose to live in the South Side because they want this vibrant Main Street. They like the character of the neighborhood, and they they like the social aspect of everything that happens down here. We've studied this time and time again, but basically, it always comes down to the fact that people live here because they want to live here. They want to live next to a vibrant Main Street that is, residential right up to a business corridor.
What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, my connectivity to the South Side really started with my dad's bar. So, like, I am attached to that, nightlife perception and bar business perception that exists in the South Side. I remember coming to the South Side when I was really young and walking in the back door of my father's business on 17th Street, and all the way up until when I was 17 years old, and the South Side Street Spectacular was in full throttle, and I was being thrown behind the bar for my first time bartending. I did understand that Southside had like transformed from when I was extremely young. My grandmother actually was born in the house that she grew up in on Sarah Street down here. So, it was always an open door policy. A lot of larger families that lived in the South Side. It kind of transformed as I grew older into my early teen years and 20s, to where there was more of a college demographic and feel. And then the residents, like Bob said, were attached to that synergy that was occurring on East Carson Street. It's really transformed itself a couple different times throughout my youth and when I went away to school and even to today. But I kind of have a lot of different feelings when it comes to Southside from my memories.
And I think to piggyback on that, I mean, we're new. My husband and I moved back to Pittsburgh after being gone for 28 years. I grew up on the East End, and we made a decision to move to the South Side because of the walkability, because of having the street. We bought a property. We live in the slopes, but we take advantage of this walkability of the street. And I have never lived anywhere with such a sense of community. And I was welcomed even prior to taking on this role. I became part of this amazing community that's quite hard to explain until you live in the middle of it.
So, can I tell an anecdote that I think illustrates
Absolutely.
Okay,
That's why we're here.
so I think most of you have probably heard me talk about this, but a couple years ago, there was a house that actually collapsed during a big windstorm. It was kind of a crazy situation. I got a call from one of the neighbors, about it, and I went down. I wasn't yet in office. I was still a staffer then, but I went down. The head of the community council was there, and someone from the Chamber of Commerce were also there. And we were kind of making sure that the folks were out of the house that collapsed. That wasn't the problem, but the house next to it, there were city services making sure the house was safe. We're standing there, and it started raining a little bit, and the neighbors across the street, who I'd never met before, were like, "Hey, like, you guys are here, like, that's crazy. It's raining a little bit. You guys want to come inside?" Oh, we also bought a whole bunch of beer because we were planning on watching WrestleMania tonight, and we're gonna have a party. You guys want some beers? And it ended up being like an impromptu, like, kind of party there with a couple of the neighbors, and it was like these people I've never met before, never met in my life, and they wanted to bring everyone in and have that like event. It's like, even in the time of like a house collapsing in Southside, we still know how to entertain, and it was, I think that's kind of like, that's the fabric of the neighborhood here.
It's in your bones.
Yeah,
It's
right.
in your bones.
Yeah, it was pretty cool. So yeah,
That is kind of a little bit of Southern hospitality north of the border,
Yeah, right.
almost.
Yeah.
So, what do you think would most surprise people about the South Side? What are some of the hidden gems, some of the secrets that that people just don't get, visitors don't get to experience, or don't even realize is here?
The amount of restaurants and great food that we have here. I think if you look from 10th to 28th, how many pockets, how many restaurants, how many little hidden gems there are from a food standpoint on the street. It's not all bars, and I think that's what people right away think. It's just one big club. It's one, but there are great owner operators, small shops and restaurants that are spectacular. So those are my biggest were my biggest surprises on the street.
Just the volume and diversity.
Yep, absolutely, and the quality too. And these owner operators that are passionate about welcoming people in and bringing them into the community and giving them this incredible experience.
Excellent. What do you think, John?
I think that from the outside looking in, Southside has always been predominantly defined by what happens at night in Southside. So I think anyone sitting outside from that lens, there's a lot to be seen. I mean, there's a lot of businesses that operate outside of that time frame that are successful, whether they're daytime businesses, service businesses, restaurants, small shops. Also, just I would say that Southside it can be defined by the business district, and it is extremely important driving force in how people perceive it. And I think a lot of people in the community have identified that, but ultimately it's a neighborhood, and I think people don't really think of that on the outside looking in whenever they first think of the South Side. Right. And that's something that we, as people and business owners and the councilmen and Susan in her position, we've realized, and that I think that is what really brought us together, really to work on this business district too, because we understand how important it is in its identity as a residential neighborhood.
I agree with everything that has been said, but the other thing that I would say is that we have, if I can take a completely different lens here, we've got a lot of really cool green space in the neighborhood. The Southside Trail is an unbelievable amenity that we have. Sometimes I think maybe it's a little bit untapped from us that we don't take full advantage of that, but we've got this huge riverfront trail that runs, all the way to McKeesport and eventually down to Washington, D.C. right here. And it's kind of like, you've kind of got this oasis from urban life, like right along the river, kind of a unique view of Pittsburgh when you get down to the High Line, something that, a way to see the city that you've never seen before. We have, it's as picturesque as anywhere else, in the country there.
And I think that could be one of the biggest surprises, because when you walk through the South Side, it's dense. Row house after row house, and you don't really see a lot of that. The green space really is on the edges. It's not in the middle of the neighborhood. So if you don't get out and explore the edges of the neighborhood, there's also Southside Park,
yes,
which connects the flats to the slopes to Arlington, to the hilltop, and that's being developed as we speak. Being cleared, developed, and and activated. So you're right. I think that.
And at some point we need to rename them, because we call both of them Southside Park.
Yeah,
and they're two different places.
Yeah. Sorry.
So at some point we need to do some naming.
Yeah, there really are some different identities too throughout Southside. I mean, even just when you're off the riverfront and you're talking about Station Square, which you're down by a stone's throw away from the central business district downtown. You can pretty much reach it, and you move through the historical district, then you move into the Southside Works, then you're on the riverfront, then you have the green space. So there's all these different areas within Southside that have separate identities, which I think are a real advantage for the community.
So the lockdown during the COVID pandemic didn't seem to hurt the residential sector of the South Side. I mean, we didn't see a spike in foreclosures. You didn't see a great population loss, aside from a dip in the rental occupancy when the universities were in remote learning. But it hit the Carson Street corridor pretty hard. Vacancies rose to 26%, and as there was as crime jumped across the U.S., particularly in cities, Carson Street and the South Side saw its share of violence. But the vacancy rate is down to 16%. The crime rate is decreasing. And I think for the first time, we're hearing optimism out of the business owners in the neighborhood. How did you all get that turned in the right direction?
I think it's a work in progress. Yeah, I mean, I think it's every day we're still working towards that. Mm-hmm. And, I'm glad to hear that you say there's optimism. There's, on an individual basis, there's not always much optimism.
Well,
from,
it's
from
Pittsburgh optimism. Pittsburgh optimism, I think, is a glass just about half full. So, yeah.
we're I mean, I think we're continuing to work at that, but I think one thing that we did well post pandemic was really trying to bring some of the business owners together, and get them in the same room, and really with John's leadership and leading the Southside Hospitality Partnership, we're able to kind of for the first time in a while. I know this isn't the first time ever, but we get together and say like, what is it that we want to see on the street? Why is it that some of us are taking more risky behavior, and how does that affect everyone else in the room? I think that again, it's still a work in progress. It's certainly not a mission accomplished situation,
Yeah.
but
It's headed in the right direction, but it's not. We're not there yet.
yes,
So that-
yeah, absolutely.
Well, so there was something that full disclosure, I am a resident of the South Side, so I've been experiencing this, firsthand. There was a public-private partnership. You've been a big advocate. You helped to establish Southside Entertainment Patrol. There was a big public safety input. There have been community groups like the Southside Community Council, the Southside Community Action Network, the Chamber of Commerce, who have been engaging the residents. On the private side. There's the Southside Hospitality Partnership, John, that you spearhead about some of the business owners here, trying to make the turn, trying to make the transition. How has that public partnership how has that worked? What does it look like? And what might it look like in the future?
I think unifying all of the organizations is critical to the success of the neighborhood, and that it's not the residents versus the businesses versus the organizations, that we all have our arms around it together. And I think that unification process, we still have work to do for sure, but it has made a huge difference in propelling this forward, because then we have one vision versus everybody having their own agenda. And so far it's really helped in that process.
Yeah, I think that, for me personally, it's hard to tell my, story about any participation in anything that's going on the South Side without the South Side can. Basically, residents being able to get together and determine what's important to themselves and actually do something about it. So, I was approached by Don Berman, and he walked into Urban Tap one day and kind of asked me, like he is continuing to ask people on a weekly basis for specific things, and said, "Hey, someone told me to come and talk to you." And he then proceeded to say, "They said that you can get. There's a lot of stuff going on the street, and we think there's some disturbances from the nighttime stuff. Someone said that you can get like the bar owners together. Do you think you can do that?" "Yeah, I think I can do that." And then he kind of gave me that look like, "All right, we need you." So that's really how the Southside Hospitality Partnership started, and our really the core mission at the beginning, coming off of COVID. And COVID was an extremely difficult time for businesses, not only because you're surviving that pandemic, but because the city shut down, and when there's no people in the central business district, there's no people. You lose a lot of your business population that comes through Southside, because we're such in a close vicinity to that area. The beginning of that hospitality partnership, we really focused on detailing what was going on the street, kind of identifying what some issues were, and then presenting it to our leaders, like Councilman Charlin's office, public safety, expressing what we needed, and that's how the safety, the entertainment patrol really started. So that's really how that facilitated early on. And I think to Susan's point, we need to the organizations now outside of we really just need to have some connectivity, and really focus on the similar mission. I think one thing that has been really unique with my experience with Southside Can, working with Bob, working with Susan, a lot of people have a vision for how they want the street to transform. I don't think it's that. I think that makes it complicated in a sense. I think really what you want to do, and you want to have the philosophy that it needs to be better than it was yesterday, and then the next day it needs to be better than it was the day before. And if you keep doing that, like you pointed out, Ken, at the beginning, like we're in a better position.
Yeah.
And then Bob kind of took a step off that and said, well, we're not where we need to be, and it's never going to happen that way.
We're better, but we're
yeah,
not best.
and we have to look a month from now, and we have to be in a better spot than we were today. And you might step back an inch or two, but you got to move forward a foot.
And so I want to jump on something that you said about the vision for Carson Street. It looks like a lot of the new businesses, there's a mature nightlife economy, a nighttime economy here. Looks like a lot of new businesses are a bit more diverse. There's a yoga studio that opened. There's someone selling craft candles and gifts. There are a lot of new restaurants. You pointed out the restaurants are coffee shops. Is that the vision, to diversify from nightlife? Is that the plan, or is it happening naturally?
So I'm glad you're saying that. It's a very, very timely question. One of the, and frankly, the reason that Susan's here is because East Carson Street existed as an unmanaged district with no plan for such a long time.
Yeah.
And what we have for a long time known is that we needed somebody to come in and actually be the person that manages the day-to-day, the vision of what we want on the street. Because left organically, I think the thing that I point out all the time is when we had a vape shop open up next to a vape shop. Vape shops are incredibly profitable to the property owners. So if you're just a coin-operated property owner, you don't actually care about the street, a vape shop's a perfect tenant for you. Yeah. But for the neighborhood, for the business district, that's not, we're not saying no vape shops anywhere, but we're saying like we have enough. We've got enough of this. Let's bring in other things. And so I have 13 neighborhoods that I represent, and I'm also I'm on the board of the Oakland Business Improvement District. One of the things that we talk about in Oakland all the time is how we need to not have national chains come in. We need to have local restaurants, because the national chains, they will pay top dollar for those property. So one of the things we're trying to do here is trying to find, fill storefronts, but work with the property owners. Say, hey, don't just take who can pay you the most. Pay who fits into the neighborhood the best. Who we can help. Look at, again, diversifying. I'm not saying we don't want any nightlife, but how can we have the right nightlife? How can we not just be dependent on nightlife? How can we start to build up a daytime economy, which is tough everywhere, but it's never going to happen if you just expect it to happen on its own.
And that has been a big part of my role, is how do I make it easy for businesses to come in and enter. I work with the brokers that market this area quite a bit and call attention to our neighborhood. Hey, pick us. We have great spaces that some are ready to jump into, some need a little bit more work, and then I follow the life of that potential prospect coming in. And then when they come in, they also get the support. How do we get permitting? How do we get help them with their logos or websites? So it makes it a really seamless opportunity for them to come into the area. And they know that support will continue on, because right now it is a managed district, semi-managed.
Yeah. So, and this is a timely discussion because recently, Councilman Charlin, you introduced legislation to establish a business improvement district, which would levy some commercial business owners along Carson Street, and create basically a budget for doing a lot, Susan, a lot of what you had just mentioned. Mm-hmm. How has that been received by the business owners, John? By the business owners that and Susan, the ones you work with. How is it so far? I know we're in the beginning of the process.
Yeah, Councilman Charlin has sent out 2 surveys to property owners and business owners within the corridor, and it's been received quite well. 94% of recipients are very positive on enacting the ordinance to create a business improvement district. From my perspective. Again, Susan just talking about a lot of the things that she's been plugged into, whether it's I mean, we talked about the balance of businesses on the street. That nighttime economy, whether it's looking at business operations, making sure people are operating properly, business acquisitions, like talking to brokers, being able to fill with the right you know the right and appropriate businesses for the street, looking at just general maintenance on the street, connecting with people on a daily basis, which is extremely important. Like Bob mentioned, it is a living, breathing thing. So it's really important to um, be able to take care of it, and that the city can't do that in and of itself. It does take resources above and beyond that. When you look at a development like down in Southside Works or Bakery Square out on the east side, I mean, they're activating their spaces, they're keeping their spaces clean. There's events. I mean, people immediately are drawn to the public safety issues down here, but in order to be successful, we have to do more than just make sure we have responsible business operations, good public safety in the evening. We have to be able to provide services on the street that allow us to progress and be sustainable long term.
I think the biggest thing too is having somebody that has their sole focus attention is the business district, period. Right? You live, eat, breathe it. I always say my why every day when I get up and come down the hill is I'm here for the success of the building owners and business owners. Every activity that I do is for that, hands down. And so when you have that focus, you have that attention, things don't escape you. It also allows us to unify everybody as one business district. It's not Jim over here, John over there. It really, we are one unit together. And I think it's extremely powerful from that standpoint.
Well, I would say, I think from my perspective, my constituency are residents, and that's who I'm accountable to. And it might seem weird that like I'm so focused on the business district and the being pro business and supporting the business down here, because ultimately at the end of the day they can't vote for, well, John can, but most of them that don't actually live in the district can't vote for me. But I think it's really important to break down the idea that like the businesses and the residents they want different things, because they don't. It comes back to my original point. Like, people choose to live here. They want coffee shops around. They want the walkable neighborhood. They want to be able to go out to dinner and not have to get in their car. So when the business district succeeds, the neighborhood succeeds, and we're all pumping together here. But it's often people will look at me, as we're talking through this NINBA discussion or the bid. People are like, why doesn't the city provide those services? And I have three major business districts in my council district. Carson Street's probably the most unique, but I can't go to I can't be a broker on every property and and say like, hey, I've got this space. It would be great for a card shop. I've got this space. It would be great for. So having someone whose job it is to do that we can support, that it can be the expert on the street. And Susan's done this role really well. There's oftentimes she's like, oh, this person. I'm like, Susan, I actually don't know that. I actually don't know the guy. The guy that owns or the broker or the person that owns that property there that you've hunted down. So that's.
But we schedule play dates.
Yeah, and just to like tighten the connectivity just even a little further here, and Bob's mentioned it a few times, a lot of neighborhoods, a lot of business districts, obviously responsibility to the residents down here. I think also, the councilman recognizes and everyone recognizes, and what connects us together is transforming the street is one of the hugest and will be one of the largest success stories of South Pittsburgh, and coming from where the street is to where the street can potentially be, we all recognize that. Also, I'll say, like, working with everyone, like in the restaurant industry, you learn to always be available, and I think that's like Susan when she's talking about living and breathing the street. The street doesn't stop, the street doesn't shut down, the street always has issues. Doesn't matter if it's 7 in the morning, 12 in the afternoon, or 8 And one thing I can give a ton of credit to Susan for is that she's always available, and she's always working on the street. And it's very similar for me, so I'm drawn to that passion. Like in the restaurant world, when there's an issue at, it could be at midnight, and I have to answer my phone. And Bob's the same way with the entire district. If something's going on, he's willing, he's able to be available. It's not just about connecting with everyone in the neighborhood and going through like the procedural things. It's like every issue that's coming up, people are really focused on being on top of it, and they're making sure that they're passionate about their responsibility. Which, if you're passionate about your responsibility, that means that you care. And once you care, that's really the first step. And we have leaders in positions right now that care about the neighborhood and want to do what's right. If you don't have those components, then it makes it hard to be successful. And that's like, I think something, for your work here, Ken, when you're going to other neighborhoods, it's really something that's important.
Yeah, I agree. And connectivity really between Coastal Street and the rest of the neighborhood. You all identified it at the beginning of this conversation, which was one of the big draws of the neighborhood is walkability, and it's the amenities and it's the convenience, of being able to have these things at your fingertips. So, as you said, as the business district, which is the primary draw, as it goes, so goes the neighborhood. And I think that's an important point that you have to have all that investment.
Mm-hmm.
So, where do you see then, given everything that's going on, right? All the input, giving the business suburban district, if it ultimately is enacted, your role. Where do you see the neighborhood in 10 years? And what are the biggest challenges to getting there? Yeah,
we see a managed district.
We do. A successful managed district.
Yeah, we see a responsible operators that exist in the nighttime economy. We see a more diverse business district with a wide array of businesses that stretch from morning to evening operations. We see a safe environment for guests that come down. We see a clean street, inviting street. We see building owners, operators that are not looking to make money in the short term, but want to be connected to the street in the long term, be successful not only financially, but have the street succeed long term. And that we need to continue to tell that story as time goes on, and that will put us in a good position. And I'll go back to my first point, which is we just need to be better than we were yesterday.
These guys have heard me say this a million times, but where I want to see the street be, I want to see us get to a point where if a 35-year-old asks a girl to go on a date in the South Side, that she doesn't go the South Side. That we've changed the reputation where that would be viewed in the same way that, I'd say like Lawrenceville, or, let's go to, I feel like we always have a little bit of a chip on our shoulder for Lawrenceville, but what they're doing is very different from us, and they're we're quirkier and cooler, but the same idea that you could have, that our reputation has changed that much, that people are like, yeah, of course the South Side. Why wouldn't I come to the South? Things that we already know, but that outsiders, our reputation has changed that much. Outsiders know it too.
So what are the biggest challenges then, to getting to that state, the managed district, where people say, of course, the South Side?
It's changing the narrative. I mean, that is the big thing of people outside of our neighborhood who don't know it, is understanding truly the gifts that we have here: the arts, music, entertainment, our restaurants, our shops, our people. Those are huge assets to what we have, and changing that narrative and changing the dynamics that are challenging those. I think those are the big things that we all work every day
on. Yeah, I mean, a lot of our threats exist, in areas that are, well publicized, and I think that it's important that we, continue to look at, business operations, and we have, and continue to try to do things as opposed to just talk about it. And that's like one of the events that we have coming up is trying to, if you have something that's negative or might be perceived as negative, which is some of nightlife operations or things that are happening in Southside, you need to turn that into a positive thing. So being able to get commitments from business owners, being able to um, you know, make sure you change what can be like a detriment to the neighborhood into somewhat more of an asset. So take care of any of those threats. I think is extremely important. Can connect another challenge is connecting with building owners that may have had these buildings for a long time or not in Pittsburgh or out of town, and obviously kind of telling our story and letting them know what the vision, like I described before, is for Southside and how it is changing. We want it to change, and being able to place businesses in those buildings and get those people involved because they're difficult to connect with. It's easy for us to sit and talk to people that we know who Bill owns this building, Sarah owns that building, and make those phone calls. We understand our individual challenges with those individuals, but sometimes we don't know some of these people, and they don't know what we're doing, and they're not going to see the podcast, and so trying to that's a huge challenge for Susan is connecting with those people along the way too.
But what I find interesting is that with the things that have been happening on the street and the news, and maybe their neighbor's place was rented, now it's getting easier. It's not perfect, but it's getting easier to connect with those building owners. And whether it's through our Art on Carson program, where we're putting art into the windows, they want to belong, and there's this interest that is being piqued. So it's contagious, I would say. So as people see it moving in the right direction, it has gotten a little bit easier.
I think, and I think you're exactly right. I think the biggest barrier is it's not government, it's not crime, it's not. The biggest barrier is faith. We need people to believe that this is going to turn around, and that that taking out that loan to invest in your business is a good investment, and that if you're a acclaimed restaurateur, that Southside is a good bet for you. We have to in some ways I think sometimes we're faking it until we make it, but I think that we just need people to have faith that this bet will pay off. Yeah. And running a business is such a gamble, and especially the folks that are in the restaurant industry, the margins are so small that you really have to believe that you can do something. And I don't know why anyone would do that, but we need to.
Yeah. Should you say that out loud?
Which is why you're a city councilman.
Yeah, but but having the faith that this will work. I think that's our barrier, and we're working to prove people that to prove every day that this will pay off.
Yeah, I think a strategy in that regard, because to Bob's point, the restaurant industry is extremely difficult. A little bit of honey goes a long way. A couple different activations or events or just the proclamation that Southside is open for business. We want you to succeed. Not only are we going to help you get started in business, but whenever you are operating, there are these things that are unique to this neighborhood that can generate real dollars. What are helpful, like gauging that data from existing businesses. When we did this, how was it for you? When we do this, how was it for you? We need more. We need this. This is what we want. And there's a willingness for people to listen to each other, And I think that goes a long way to get prospective businesses down here. It starts with a conversation, but and then it's putting a couple activations and things out there that are actually beneficial. And to Bob's point, the belief, you don't blindly believe, you believe because you trust, and then you believe that the people are going to keep their word and that we're going to continue going in that direction. It's not blind belief, it's belief in that plan. So
it sounds like you have that belief.
Yeah.
All of you invested
every day.
Yeah. And as you say, I think the momentum is getting a little easier to get in touch with the business owners. starting to see some new businesses open, et cetera. So it sounds like the momentum has begun. Again, there's still a road to travel. There are risks, there are challenges, but it sounds like there is some early momentum there. So, are there any final thoughts? Anything that you would want anyone to know about the South Side, or your thoughts on even the next 18, 24 months?
There's so many words in my head. I think it's an exciting time to be here. I wouldn't have taken this job if I didn't believe in what could be done. And I think a year from now, we're going to look back and go, wow, we did that. This happened. And we still have a heavy lift ahead of us, but come experience what we have behind us right here, because it's a fantastic place and amazing people and amazing business owners that are here. That's my 3 cents.
Yeah, I know. I mean, it's hard for me because I operate businesses on the street. It's really what we've focused in on here, and that's kind of what I'm drawn to. But I think the next 18 to 24 months are going to be consequential for the neighborhood. To be a realist, I do believe, like I said, we were talking about belief and what everyone's willing to do. I think we'll be successful. I think there's a lot of exciting things that are going to happen, including becoming a managed district, which is probably the biggest success in that, as well as some other things. And I would just say, wait and see. But I'm pretty hopeful, and I think we're going to have a positive outcome.
Yeah, I mean, I think we're going to be doing a lot of what we've been doing well over the next couple years here. But having a managed district, having that entity be fully funded, I think we're going to be able to. Susan was able to drop the vacancy rate 8%. In 1 year here. I don't know that 8% will always be the bar that we're looking at, but that's really really impressive. That kind of work, and I think as that momentum continues to happen, and as folks start to see that shift change, I think our future is really bright. And maybe I have to believe that because I'm an elected official and I'm kind of an optimist by nature, but I think it's happening. I'll have these conversations sometimes and they're like we're at rock bottom right now. We're at rock bottom. I'm like, no, we're not. No, we're not.
It's that Pittsburgh optimism again.
Yeah. So I think it's all relative, but I think it's all moving in the right direction.
Well, thank you for taking the time to talk with us today. I hope it's given everybody a better understanding of where the South Side is, where it's come from, and particularly where it's headed. I for one have a much better understanding about where we're headed, and it's going to be really interesting to watch it unfold.
So there you have it. South Side, glassmaker, steel producer, entertainer extraordinaire, residential mecca. It's been quite a journey since its founding 263 years ago, and that journey is about to round another curve. This place never stops changing. It's a real testament to those who call the South Side home. It's going to be fun to watch their progress and see what they come up with next. Thanks for watching. I hope you enjoy the rest of your own journey today.
We hope you enjoyed the podcast. If you want to learn more about the stories being created around Pittsburgh, sign up for our newsletter on Substack. You can also follow us on Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, and LinkedIn to keep up with the conversation around the Steel City. Until next time, we'll see you online.